I'm Jack Loudon and I play Oswald Alving in Ghosts. Oswald, he is the son of Helene, the main character, and he was sent away from this house when he was, I think we've decided it when he was 7 years old. He was sent away to go and live in Paris. We found out, obviously, through the course of the play that he was sent away by his mother to stop him being influenced by his father's debauchery and being a general idiot. And he comes back this sort of floppy, bohemian, angry artist who is very, very unsettled with life back home here, and he finds it extremely boring. And he's back, essentially, he's back to find somebody, it's horrible, but he's back to find somebody to kill him, euthanize him, because he's got syphilis, even though it's never mentioned in the play by name, but that's what he's got. But he's just an incredibly angry, smart-mouthed, typical young guy, really, and sort of out of place in the time it's set as well. My first impressions of him, to be honest, I wanted to smack him in the mouth. He has, to me, he's extremely sort of middle class. His regrets are extremely, you know, he regrets not being able to paint anymore. And I think when you read that on the page, when you don't really have the full impression of him, it's hard to sympathise with him. And because he's so outspoken and really verging on arrogant, and, you know, I really didn't like him at all, not in the slightest. And I still don't know if I really like him. I absolutely love playing him because there's nothing that you don't get to do in the part. It's you know, he's a social hand grenade, you know. He's what you, sometimes when you're sitting on the bus or on tube or whatever, sometimes you want to say what he says, you know, but you can't, obviously, because of the social restraints. But that's the whole point of him, is that he absolutely detests the social restraints. So he's a joy to play, not necessarily a lovely character or a lovely person, but he's a joy to play. How I got into him, for me, being Scottish, having a Scottish accent, I think there was a sort of immediate, whether it's validated or not, but for me there was a sort of immediate handicap I felt I had, because I had this Scottish accent, in playing this incredibly foppish, you know, big idiot, really, and he's, you know, he's always drunk and he thinks he's always right. So for me, one of the easiest ways into that was to change my accent. So I'm doing the sort of very RP English accent. And it's not saying, no, I don't mean that English, you know, it's easier to play an idiot if you're English. I meant that it was easier to sort of give in to that side of his character, because I'm just not like him in any way like that. So it was easier to do that with having an accent on, because it was instantly like, well, it's not me. So I can shout, I can scream, I can stamp, I can be rude, I can be everything. So there was like an instant license to be outspoken and be a bit annoying, because I had this mask of this accent. So to be honest, the first way into it was through the accent, and then it was just playing around with it in rehearsals, because, like I said, there's nothing that you don't get to do in the part. You know, he's in 3 scenes. They're huge scenes, and the first scene he's in, he's just very arrogant and very sort of Kevin, you know, almost quite teenager. Second scene, he's off his face, he's drunk, and then in the third scene, he's dying. So there's nothing you don't get to do in the part. So it was really about becoming comfortable and not embarrassed, really, because he does say the kind of things that I would only dream of saying in public without getting arrested or punched.
Do you want to know when I have seen immoral behaviour?
No, I do not.
Well, I'll tell you. When some local worthy from round here comes to our humble bohemian district sniffing around the women, that's when you hear about places and goings-on that you'd never even imagine.
People from here?
Yes, have you never heard these worthies talk of the immorality of foreign cities?
Yes, sir, of course I have.
Talk of nothing else.
Yes, well, you can believe every word because it's all from practical experience. I can't bear hearing the freedom of our way of life. I don't know the beauty of it. Smeared with muck by moralising cretins.
Oswald, don't.
The relationship between myself and Leslie's character was, it was kind of easy straight away, because it's quite black and white. The relationship between the two of them, it's very black and white. It's very obvious. And you see it all the time. Obviously maybe not in the extreme circumstances that are in the play, but between, you know, children and their parents, just a child that has angst and he's not a teenager. I think he's 25, 26 in this, but he is a teenager, and he kicks and screams and disagrees with everything that his mum says, you know. And I think that that's something that, you know, happens and will happen till the end of time, you know. So it was quite easy to do that, and also Leslie is just up for anything, you know. When I got the job and I heard that Leslie was doing it, you know, I instantly sort of tightened up, because she's this phenomenal actress, you know, this incredible body of work, you know, and you put an aura around them as a younger actor. But straight away she was up for anything. I mean, I ended up, you know, I chuck her about in this play, and she was up for it. So it just kind of, the relationship just kind of built out of playing the characters, for want of a better way of putting it. But the characters are so suited because they're so far apart. It's really cool. Richard adapted it from a Norwegian translation, and I think I read the original once, and you know, Richard's obviously sort of put his own touch to it, made it extremely speakable, even a bit more sort of contemporary and a bit modern, which suits me down to the ground. Not only as an actor, but as in the part. You know, he's supposed to be this mark of the changing times, and everything's really speakable. It's ridiculously speakable for a classical piece. But I think it's kind of been decided that Oswald in the play is Ibsen. He's speaking Ibsen's mind, because Ibsen was so against everything that was going on in society, and he's used Oswald as this vessel to have a go and moan and preach. So I feel sort of particularly quite close to Ibsen through playing this part, because I feel that all I'm doing a lot of the time is just expressing one man's view of the world 120 years ago, and it's incredible to see how but back then in sort of 1881 when it was written, how horribly and badly received it was, because it was so shocking. It was talking about euthanasia and incest and debauchery and everything. And now when those topics are just sort of spilled out on this stage, how they just fly past. And I think it's cool. And it's a testament to somebody like Ibsen, because it shows how far we've actually come as a society. I mean, we've got ages to go, obviously. But they just sort of, you know, they're just passed over, these things that are shouted out. You know, you'd hear more of an audible response to somebody swearing in this play than you would hit somebody talking about incest, you know. And I think that's a big sort of mark of the time, and I think that's what he wanted, Ibsen, and he does it through Oswald. The great thing that the illness gives the character in this is that he's kind of made his peace already. He knows he's going to die, so he has this instant freedom, and I think that accounts for a lot of what he can and can't say, and he just, you know, he's going to die, and I think he's probably been told that he could die any moment, or he could turn into this vegetable that he's so terrified of turning into at any moment, and he in fact does. It happens. That was the first thing when I read the play, when I read the moment from when one minute he's talking with his mother and the next he's having this attack. whether it was instantly believable or not is a different matter. But that was the hardest thing for me in the play, was that tiny little moment between being sane, being normal, to then having this attack and flicking into what he was so terrified of. But having to play with that knowledge of having this terminal illness, it sort of frees him up, and I think which I imagine it probably does with a certain amount of people. When you get that news, you have that. Well, does it matter what I do now? And it makes him extremely dangerous and reckless, and actually more interesting. But he doesn't care about the effect of it on his mum. He doesn't care. He doesn't seem to show any kind of remorse, and he says but another example of him railing against the ideas of the world that he's in. He says something like, why do you have to love your parents just because they're your parents? And he really stands by that, and she doesn't understand that. But he truly believes in, why should I love you if you've never done anything? He didn't grow up around them. Why should he love his parents? So there's really weird moments in the play where he just says, I think she asks him, do you not love me? And he says, I'm fond of you. I love doing that bit. I absolutely love saying that because, I can't think of anything more horrible. But yeah, the illness just gives him a freedom, a tragic freedom.
No, listen. No, listen. Can my mother bear to watch her son in pain? Oswald! It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Here's my hand. Will you do it, Mama?
Syphilis is never mentioned by name in the play. It's really there as a massive metaphor for rotting within and the effects of his father. And medically, the way it's described in the play, I think some of it's not that accurate. I don't think he got it that right. I mean, we've had doctors see the play and, I love it, but medically it's rubbish. And I think to a certain extent it is, because he just uses it as a metaphor. He doesn't get too medical and technical. But I went to a medical library in Edinburgh, and asked a guy about syphilis, and we sat and spoke for a bit, and there was just so many different symptoms, so many different ways that it could affect, and I think that that really allowed us, when it came to this scene, because in the original he writes it that all of a sudden Oswald is still, and that's about as vague as you can get. So we had a lot to play with, and I was quite concerned with not offending anybody, because it's one of a lot of things that I've never experienced, touch wood, yet, and so there's nothing I can call on. I can't call on it, so it's pure guesswork. It's just guesswork, and Richard and I were just very, very, very clear that we really wanted to attack the metaphor side of it. So it's not too specific. He has the lines, where's the sun? Give me the sun, the sun, the sun, the sun. And you can look on the sun meaning the truth, or it can be the sun, because Richard, we played with the idea that he loses his sight in that moment, as well as affects his speech. But the whole idea was that he turns into something that he's terrified of. He turns into a child again that needs his mother. The last thing he wants is to have to need his mother. So I did research it, but found out very quickly that it's just a massive metaphor. So it's not too specific. But it's horrible to do. It's painful as well. I come in for about 6ish and really just sort of mince about in my dressing room and go see people, see Leslie, see the rest of the cast, see the crew. I get into costume at beginners, not saying that in a cool way, but I just do. I'm not on for the first 20 minutes. But I think at this point in the play, God, I mean, at the beginning of the run, at the Almeida, you know, I was on stage doing warm-ups, having to touch every bit of whatever, you know, through just being incredibly nervous, not through any superstition, just being nervous and just thinking, oh, this is what I should be doing. But now, no, I get dressed at beginners, watch stuff on my laptop. That's about it, really. And just the key for me is always I just run two or three of the lines in the accent and then go on. And it keeps it fresh, I guess, because you need to in a long run because it can drive you mental. But yeah, no, I don't have much of a routine. The key to everything is confidence. It's not ability or even hard work. Confidence on stage, I've learned from the 3 big projects that I've ever done on stage since leaving drama school, has been the key to it, because you know, things can happen, the table can fall over. God almighty, the amount of glasses and champagne bottles that I've broken, haven't opened or whatever, that it doesn't sound like much, but to deal with it live on stage it can be quite nerve-wracking. And as soon as you've got that confidence, but there's all different kind of things. I mean, when I'm drunk in the second scene, there's so many different things that I've found now that I wasn't doing in the first month because I was thinking about this and that and object, you know, whatever. But now you can, it's so fun. It's so fun, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous when you get that relaxed because you can start doing things that just don't fit. I've learnt to completely trust myself, and I've learnt to think less, and I've learnt to analyse less. I've just learnt to be more confident. I've learnt a hell of a lot sitting opposite Leslie. And there's a lot of things I think I knew already. But, you know, I mean, it's just every day is a constant shock. You learn different things. But I've definitely learned to trust myself. And I've learned to really, really, really enjoy it. Really enjoy it. I learned how to cope with a long run. That's one thing. Definitely learned how to cope with a long run. I've done 2 plays before this, extremely long runs, and not necessarily dealt with them in the best way of being a long run. But this I have. And I've also learnt that theatre is really what I do love doing. As a kid, I wanted to be a footballer. I still want to be a footballer. If I could be a footballer now rather than an actor, I'd take it. I'd bite your hand off. Because I think the attraction of sport was that you could go out and achieve something, but you don't necessarily know what the outcome's going to be. Whereas a play, I always got frustrated with the fact that you could find thousands of different ways to do it, but the outcome's always the same. You know, you still have to die at the end. You know, you can't change that. But I've learnt to love the 15,000 different ways that you can get to the end, and that's what I love about theatre. And that there's a progression from beginning to end of the job. I just get better, or not necessarily better, but I get more confident and play a hell of a lot more. And that's what I love. I love that. And I mean, I love being in front of an audience. It's great. It's brilliant that filming that doesn't really have that aspect. You know, and actors say that all the time, and it's obvious, but you know, it is a bit like a drug. The view that I have at the end when I'm dying, because of the light changing, I get to see everybody's face for an instant, for about 15 seconds. And it's amazing, the faces on people. The you know, massive hench blokes sitting with a sort of face of complete confusion. And I think that they're confused because they're crying, rather than anything being confusing about the play. But yeah, but I think people leave it. I think strangely people leave it a little bit with a little bit of an up. I don't know why, whenever I speak to people, they kind of feel, you know, life's short. Do something with it.